Well, yeah, you'll know if you need to trample people.
Have you sued them back for this? Like,
They're saying that you're one of the original anonymous people. Is that accurate? Is that an exaggeration? Or is that true?
I was in the group of people that helped that founded Anonymous originally.
Welcome to the Goat Show, the show where we celebrate and debate all things great. I am joined by my co-hosts, Fresh and Deezy. Gentlemen, welcome. My name is ZiLLY, aka Ravine. And man, we have a great interview today that we're going to be getting to shortly. But before we do, make sure you like, make sure you subscribe. What else, Fresh? What else, Deezy? Make sure they make sure you comment.
Send it to your mom. Send it to your aunt.
All the things. Send it to your favorite hacktivist. Send it to your favorite NFT artist because they got to watch this because this is going to be a really amazing interview. Today we have a very special guest. He's an activist. He's an artist. His name is Jeremy Ryan, aka SEGWAY Jeremy, aka NFT DEMON. Welcome, sir. Good to see you. How you doing today?
Thanks, and thanks for having me. I'm doing good. Another day, another dollar. You know how it goes.
Yeah. Well, listen, man. The way we, for everybody out there maybe watching, the way we kind of came upon Jeremy is because we are a part of the whole Drip crew thing. If you have not seen Drip yet, it's an exciting new social platform, or I don't even know if it's a social platform. It's just a platform for creators and collectors. It's really amazing. We'll be talking a lot about Drip a little later on in the program. But if you haven't seen it yet, go to drip.haus, HAUS, and check out all the great creators there, including Jeremy here, who goes by the moniker NFT DEMON. But we were on a space the other day with Drip. Jeremy was in there. He's doing an exciting drop with LiL Pump on that platform. But you had a really amazing story, Jeremy, and you're a really fascinating person. And the more we did the research and we dug into sort of your background, there were just so many things that were compelling that we felt we had to have you on. We wanted to talk to you about and sort of learn more about you. So I guess I want to start from the beginning, which is just you grew up in Madison, Wisconsin. Is that correct?
Yeah, most of my schooling was in Wisconsin. Elementary school was in Platteville, which was a little bit more south, and then middle school and high school was in suburb of Madison, and then I ended up moving to Madison after that. So most of my adult life was in Madison.
And how do you feel about Madison, Wisconsin? It's a place I've only been there once, but I don't know. Like, how would you describe that part of the United States and living there?
Kind of boring. There's really nothing to do there but drink. But there's not really a whole lot going on. But I made the best of it.
Well, from what I understand, for a good part of your life in Madison, you were, I think, just a business person, right? I mean, you had two different companies for this, and again, if what I read is incorrect, please correct me. But you had like a business called Sales R Us, and you had a window tinting business. Is that accurate?
Correct. Yeah.
And what was Sales R Us?
Sales R Us was a wholesale and consulting firm. We primarily dealt with customers in Dubai and the United Arab Emirates, but we would do wholesaling of cell phones back before other countries could get the same prices as the U.S. Back when the U.S. dominated the market, and then switched more to consulting different sorts of solutions that telecoms could use for different sorts of problems.
What do you think of Dubai and that part of the world? And I mean, have you visited there? I mean, you've done business with people there, but I'm just curious what you think of that part of the world.
Oh yeah, I've been to Dubai and Abu Dhabi plenty of times, and I really like it. It's probably the safest place I've ever been, and so but you can leave anything out anywhere, and it's not going to get stolen or taken or anything like that. Yeah, there's virtually no crime. People are friendly. It's kind of a melting pot. A lot of people expect to go there and see, like a whole bunch of more of the traditional Arab clothing. But there's a lot more people from all over the place. It's like it's a massive melting pot. So you do see a lot of the traditional like Arabic dresses and whatnot for men and women, but you also see a whole lot of people from all over the world: Asia, Europe, North America, South America, Africa. Like there's the population is pretty split between the native UAE people and then people from everywhere else and all over the place. So yeah, it's an interesting experience, but it's a great place to go. They're real big on hospitality over there. When you're doing business with a company or whatnot, at least back then, it's probably still the same now. But when you're doing business with a company or whatnot, they're extraordinarily hospitable, like way above and beyond what the U.S. does or what I've experienced here.
Man, that's definitely on my bucket list, and I'm sure Fresh and Deezy feel the same. I definitely want to go out there at some point and spend a little time. But that's fascinating. Okay, so I I'm kind of curious, when does your political awakening occur? Were you always sort of politically minded? Was it something that initially triggered your interest or your awakening? Because from what I understand, you're living in Wisconsin. You have these businesses that you're running, and then around about the mid 2000s, you start kind of engaging in political activism.
Yeah. Or it was 2011 was when I started engaging in political activism. I had actually run for alderperson before that once, and I didn't make it past the primary. I got really close. And actually, interestingly enough, I proposed an idea which ended up getting the mayor many years later elected by stealing my idea. But nonetheless,
What was that idea?
it's called bus rapid transit. And yeah, I mean, I had proposed that idea. I think it was in 2009. She became mayor in like 2018, 2017. But yeah, she completely and entirely stole the idea without giving credit for it.
What is bus rapid transit? Is it some sort of public transit thing, or?
Yeah, basically, the buses, the way they went is they didn't have direct routes from one side of the city to the other. And so it would take, sometimes like 2 hours to get from one side to another side of the city. So what I proposed was changing the bus system so that there were direct routes that didn't stop, that went from, one transfer point to the other transfer, because there was north, east, south, and west transfer point, and then downtown could be another transfer point, and that's what ended up happening. And then you'd go direct to there, and then the buses would branch off in those areas from there. It just made more sense. So every 15 minutes you could catch a bus from one side of town to the other side of town, and then you're just waiting for the bus to go to whatever area of that side of town you're trying to go, versus catching a bus that's going from the north to the south and stopping everywhere along the way. Like, that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense.
So you're telling me that that one thing, which is a genius. It seems obvious, right? That would be something to change. But that one thing is what people were like, hell yeah, I'm going to vote for this person. Or how did that happen?
It was her most popular campaign idea. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Cool. Well, this is what I find fascinating about you, because it seems like, that's just one example, but it seems like you're always at the sort of the cutting edge of things. I guess where you became more of a public figure, at least from what I understand, is with Scott Walker and his collective bargaining. Can you kind of explain like what that was and how you sort of came into the public eye because of that situation?
Yeah, so I was basically just riding my Segway downtown. I lived downtown at the time, and I was around the Capitol Square, and I saw a bunch of students with heart-shaped balloons. This was on Valentine's Day, and I saw a bunch of students with heart-shaped balloons, and I just went to inquire what was going on. They explained that there was a bill that to end collective bargaining that they were trying to ram through really quickly through the government within like 3 days, so that nobody had a chance to actually look at it.
Well, sorry, by collective bargaining, what does that mean exactly?
Yeah, the union's ability to bargain with the government
Right.
over benefits and other sorts of things.
Right.
They
Right.
took that. They ended up taking it away eventually, but that's what the bill was taking away the ability of the union to bargain with the government. And it was only public unions. I mean, obviously, they can't control private unions or anything. Um, but there was a lot of other stuff that was in the bill, and I don't even remember all the details of it. But it was like a 300-page bill with a whole bunch of garbage that they were trying to ram through so quick that nobody could read it.
Right.
And so I went up. They went up to the governor's. Well, first in the rotunda, they let off the balloons so that they went to the top of the rotunda, and the rotunda was filled with heart-shaped balloons. And then they went to the governor's office, and they delivered Valentines to the governor to try to get him to change his mind or whatnot, which ended up never happening. But then they were like, "We're gonna come back the next day." And then the next day, it came back. There was the public hearing. And the Wisconsin State Constitution is actually unique in which it mandates that the doors of the Capitol have to be open to all people. They can set hours, like it can close at 6 p.m., but they can't put metal detectors in there. They can't restrict the ability of people to go anywhere in the Capitol. And when there's an official hearing going on, they can't close the doors at all. And so the idea, so then when I came back the next day, there were like 10,000 people. The unions had like filled the place with people. Um, and so we were trying to do a public hearing, and we ended up running the public hearing for like 4 days. So people ended up moving mattresses and all sorts of stuff into the Capitol and tents. I mean, we were smoking joints in tents on the third floor, and we didn't know at the time, but the police chief said no arrests unless it's something like super serious. So like the cops would like bang on the tent, and they'd be like, "Hey, we know what you're doing. We're gonna come back in 10 minutes. We need you to be gone." And so then we just moved to another area and finished smoking the joint. But yeah, it was it was a fun time. But the thing is, like, I wasn't union affiliated at all. Now, I do think there are some issues with unions that should probably be addressed. And I'm not, but I also think that unions do form somewhat of a check to corporations' balance. There's checks and balances and everything. And it's not perfect by any means. And there is a lot, and I particularly disagree with police unions, but that's a whole nother story. But I more so disagreed. Like, the unions clearly had the resources and the people to fight their own battle. And I wasn't a union employee or anything. I more so disagreed with the way that it was being brought about. The fact that they were trying to ram it through so quickly before anyone really had the chance to be able to digest it. I mean, the public hearing was like less than 24 hours after it was introduced.
Right.
Who's going to be able to read 300 pages in less than 24 hours? Even the senators and whatnot in the public hearing didn't read the whole bill. So it was it was just completely against the democratic process.
Right.
So I ended up saying, once the public hearing was over, they ended up telling everyone to leave. I said, "Screw that. Let's actually just like stay." And that started the Wisconsin Capitol occupation. And so what they ended up doing the next day was they ended up locking everyone out. So there were only about 80 of us still in the building. And we held the building down for a good week or so until the judge finally ordered us to get cleared out, but also ordered that they couldn't lock the doors ever again, and that they had to take the metal detectors out as well, because that violated Article 1, Section 10 of the Wisconsin Constitution, which mandates that the doors of the Capitol be open to everyone. So yeah, we would. That ended the actual occupation. But then what ended up happening was they started making illegal orders, like you can't hold signs on the second floor, or you can't hold signs anywhere but the ground floor, and you can't silently hold signs in public hearings, and you can't film public hearings, which are being streamed online anyways.
Right.
They were just doing this stuff just to just because they could. It was a power trip. And so I started leading mass arrest actions around that. And at first it was just me and one other person who flew in from Florida because I couldn't find anyone to join me. Because back then it was different. Like now people get arrested all the time in protests and whatnot. It's no big deal. Nobody thinks anything about it. But back then it hadn't really been seen by like regular people. Like the anarchists had their little things going on, and there'd be like extreme fringes that would get arrested in political actions, but it wasn't like regular people getting arrested since the Vietnam War days. And so it took me a while to find somebody who was willing to actually do it with me. And then she did. And then the next day, one other person joined in. The next day, there were like 5 more people that joined in because they saw the videos. And that was back in the early days of videos. Like this was before streaming even existed.
Mhm.
This was when you would record a video and then upload it to YouTube. But thankfully, the Capitol had Wi-Fi, so it was a little bit easier. But the quality of the videos isn't that great though, because cameras weren't that great on on laptops and whatnot back then. But nonetheless, people saw the videos, and then on the 5th day, there was 2 kids. One was like 7 and one was like 11. They had just gotten back from Boy Scout camp, and they saw my videos, and they wanted to go take part as well as part of like a Boy Scout or Eco Scout program, civic badge or something. I don't know how it all works. Something with the Boy Scouts and having to do with civics, and they arrested the kids.
Oh wow!
And so that created
how old were they?
like 7 and 11.
Wow.
I mean, they just detained them briefly. They didn't actually like bring them to jail and everything, but like they brought their parents with them. They arrested their parents too,
Oh, wow.
and that created such a uproar that they ended up killing the whole policy. And then 3 years later, we ended up winning a lawsuit against them due to that action. But that was 6 of us. The kids' parents decided they didn't want to take part in that. But regardless, it was an interesting time, and it was over 50 arrests, and that's
Wow.
what started the political journey.
Well, because my understanding is that, and I'm not sure about the timeline, but my understanding from what I read is that this was like part of like some of the first Occupy, like, so maybe for anybody who's younger is watching, the Occupy Wall Street, the Occupy movement that was happening in 2008, up until like 2012 or so. But they're saying that this is sort of a precursor to all that, and that you were one of the people that kind of were involved in those as well, right? Is that accurate, or
Yeah.
am I missing the timeline?
Yeah, Occupy actually started later in 2011,
Okay.
but it did go in some cities for several years. But what ended up happening with Occupy was they saw the videos of the Capitol occupation and they got an idea, and so they contacted me and asked if I would come out and help start this thing in New York City.
Hmm.
And so I'm like, yeah, sure. So I went out and I helped start up Occupy as well, primarily leading civil disobedience trainings, which is what actually ended up shifting the entire narrative in the country. Was when college students, because at first it was mostly like older people, people in their like 30s and 40s and stuff at the Occupy. But then a group of college students in New York City came by, and they wanted to kick things up a notch. So we decided on an action where we would all link arms and just sit around. I think we were sitting around the bowl, and then the cops ended up taking canisters of tear gas and just spraying us. Just doing nothing, and all we were doing was sitting there. And that image nowadays actually that doesn't really get a whole lot of emotion, but that image incited so much emotion that it completely and entirely changed the whole country's opinion, practically, of the Occupy Wall Street movement. Later on, Occupy Wall Street ended up getting co-opted by the Democratic Party and the big money machine, and it ended up becoming something that it wasn't started as. But what it was started as, once the police started tear gassing the students, people of all sides were like, "This is just wrong." Like they're not doing anything, they're not hurting anything, they're just exercising their First Amendment rights. and all they're doing really is linking arms. We weren't even shutting down a building at that point or anything. And so yeah, that got a massive response, and just the image alone. I've had people tell me since then, like that's the image that really changed my mind on protest and everything else. Was the police spraying all the students, and I was somewhere in there too. But
Do you still believe in the power of protest? Do you feel like it's effective, or that people should, get out in the streets and do like you guys are doing in this day and age, kind of like what's happening now with the Israel Palestine thing? Like, do you feel like it's still effective and people should still do it?
I think it can be an effective means, and I think I also think civil disobedience can be fairly effective as well. It's just you got to utilize it properly. If y- there has to be some element of theatrics or some way to get people to pay attention, and you don't necessarily have to go to like the riot level and everything like that to get people to pay attention. But a well executed protest, I think, can still have the ability to have some sort of effect, and no matter which side you're on of whatever issue. I think that there is the ability for. I mean, that's what our country was founded on, was protest. Like that's what founded our country. So it would make sense that that would be what would like we need kind of in some way refound our country. Like, things are just gone so downhill so quick that I think we need to like basically like relay the foundation of our entire country.
Yeah, yeah. Well, so another part of this that is interesting. I mean, it seems like like I said, it seems like you're always at the beginning, cutting edge of things. They're saying that you're one of the original anonymous people. Is that accurate? Is that an exaggeration, or is that true?
I was in the group of people that helped found that founded Anonymous originally, or at least a group of people that are credited with it. I mean, it's hard to tell who was all there because Anonymous started on 4chan, and Anonymous, the name started because your name on 4chan is anonymous. But there are some people that formed later on and formed into a group and started organizing and doing more organized stuff. And I was in that initial group, which the federal government later found out and pulled into court records and whatnot. But it was, by the time they could find anything out, it was well past the 5-year statute of limitations. So they couldn't charge me with anything because in America, for cybercrime, at least, if it's 5 years, if it's after 5 years, they can't charge you, even if they have all the evidence in the world. And that's why I can openly talk about it too, because all of the people that were in those earlier days aren't really like hacking governments and stuff right now, because the natural assumption is we're all under some sort of surveillance, some level of surveillance. But also the legal basis is that it's all over 5 years ago. So we can talk about a lot of things. There's a lot of things that I don't talk about just because they may or may not implicate other people who might still be doing something, and I might not know about it. That was part of the lesson that we learned, is like you don't tell everybody what you're doing, and you don't tell everybody who you are. But I'm not trying to like implicate people accidentally that may still be doing things. But nowadays I stick to the more legal means, which is still you can still do a whole lot of damage through legal means. Like doxing isn't actually illegal. Doxing someone isn't illegal. You can't post it on Twitter. It's against Twitter policy, so suspend your account. But it's not actually unlawful to dox somebody unless you're doxing like their social security number or something. That's a whole different story. But something there's a whole lot that you can do within legal bounds, particularly if you have access to different resources, that you can still really majorly fuck someone's life up, basically, and not actually violate the law. So there are ways to still take part and some people still do that, even knowing that they're under surveillance, because there's nothing that the government can really do.
Wow. Well, I mean, gosh. Okay. So okay, so you're part of this. You're part of the Occupy thing. You're part of the beginning of Anonymous, and then I think for the last few, well, I mean, pretty much up until recently, I mean, you were active as an activist, and I saw one video on YouTube where, bro, you get tackled on a freaking Segway, dude. That shit is crazy. Like, what happened there? Like, and that was like recent, right? It was only a couple of years ago.
Yeah, that was recent. That was actually at an ICE facility. I smoked a joint in their parking lot, and 5 day or like 5 minutes later, they came out and just like tackled me. I didn't even think they were coming for me, but they did that because they wanted to identify people, and it's actually an unlawful way to identify people. What I was trying to do with the demonstration was prove that the federal police were no better under Biden than they were under Trump, and that they were continuing that the federal agents were really messing up, and the whole police accountability issue, bringing that back into the forefront. And Portland was a great testing ground for that. Although there was a lot of different stuff that had gone on there. By the time I got there, not at this particular demonstration, but at certain places, people were shooting fireworks at the police. But also, the police department there was so unorganized. They had no idea like what they were doing. They had no structure, no organization. I had never seen that anywhere in the country, and I had been, all over the country by that point. And I had never actually seen that, because I really like people think, or people, the media tried to twist it as though like, I was a left wing protester. The fact was neither party liked me. Both parties hated me, and neither party could control me. But I believed very strongly in the First Amendment, and I believed that the First Amendment is kind of pointless if it's not weaponized. And so you have to weaponize the First Amendment, otherwise there's no point having it.
What do you mean by that? Because I think I agree with you on this, but how would you describe weaponization of the First Amendment?
Pushing the borders of of free speech, and being able to push the borders of free speech, and the borders that are legally acknowledged as the borders. If you can't do that, then there's no point in having the First Amendment. The First Amendment isn't made for common speech. The First Amendment isn't made for us having this interview. Like there's the First Amendment is made for the people to be able to use their voices or their bodies in ways that the government or other people may not like. That's the entire point of the First Amendment.
Well, you can't have free speech, but the minute you say but, I don't agree with you anymore, right? Like, because free speech has to be absolute or it's not free speech.
Exactly. I mean, there are things that can happen after speech that become illegal, but it's not necessarily the speech that should be illegal. It's whatever action happens afterwards. Like if you say so and so deserves to die, right? And then someone kills that person. It's not the speech. It's not your opinion that you said they deserve that.
I actually don't think that should be illegal.
No, but the person killing it should be illegal. Is what I'm
Yeah,
saying.
the person, but like say the person who said it, like for example, if I say it, then you kill them. Even if I explicitly say, yo, you should go kill that guy. If you listen to me, it's on you, bro. You're a grown man.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And I agree completely. And I don't agree with this whole like inciting riots thing either. If someone wants to get on the microphone and say, this is fucked up, let's riot, then arrest them if they riot, of course, for destruction of property or whatever they do. Arrest people who are doing whatever that, if you want to do that. But I think that speech should be legal and it should be absolute. I also think, there's some things that I don't do personally, like racial slurs. I don't use those because, but I also think that, those types of things and what quote unquote misogynistic terms and whatever else, some of those, like I used to get like crazy, like feminists when I'd call someone a bitch, they'd get like fucking go crazy on me, and I'd be like, you realize like that's like completely anti-equality, right? Because like if I call someone a dick, you're not gonna have an issue. You're not gonna be like, oh my god, that's like against men.
I mean, I know a lot of men that are bitches, right? So
yeah, but regardless, there's words that only have power because people give them power to begin with,
right?
You know, and so if people wouldn't give those words power, then they wouldn't have any power. So it's kind of it's I understand why people get upset about certain things, and like I don't use certain words just because I think like that would say something about my character that I don't want to say about myself. But I also agree, you know, in the free speech and being able to do that, and I also think that you know, people should be a bit less sensitive and not give power to words that they give power to, because if nobody reacts, then that word has no power, no matter what it is. Like it doesn't matter what word it is, you know, if nobody reacts to it, then it has no power.
I mean, I take it a step further. I'm like, because the classic thing that they use to sneak in all this, you know, all this anti-free speech stuff is, oh, you can't yell fire in a crowded theater. And I'm like, listen, if somebody walks in a theater and yells fire, I'm gonna at least look around. You know what I'm saying? I'm at least looking for smoke. Like I never understood that. I was like, it always seems so stupid to me. I'm like, all right, like you can say whatever you want. I mean, I don't know. I guess you could say people run out and start trampling or something. But again, it's uh yeah. I mean, you'll have no disagreement from us, man. Like we're 100% hardcore, you know, free speech absolutists. But yeah.
Yeah, and I do think people should be able to say fire in a crowded theater, because like if you're dumb enough to leave the theater and you know if you're dumb enough to start panicking without any smoke, without any sign of fire, then you know is that you kind of get whatever's coming. If you trampled or whatever, you get what's coming. Because like a fire doesn't spread so quickly that like within 30 seconds the whole place is up in flames. You know, you're gonna see signs. If there is a fire in the theater, you're gonna see signs with enough time to exit. You know, it doesn't work that way.
Well, yeah, you'll know if you need to trample people.
Yeah.
If something explodes and there's a huge fire, everyone's gonna know.
Yeah.
And if it's not that big, then likely you don't need to kill people to get out. You know?
Yeah.
Probably look for the fire extinguisher. That would be like my first reaction. I'd be like, shit, was somebody like smoking a joint in the back? Where the fire extinguisher's over here. Let's go, guys. You know, like I don't really understand.
Or just find the exit. Either way.
Okay, well, I mean, kind of a rough segue here, but you've been accused of being a nuclear terrorist, bro. What happened? How did you become a nuclear you know, alleged nuclear terrorist? Explain this situation to me. This is wild.
Yeah. So, clearly throughout the years, I had been pissing off the government on multiple different levels. And at one point, I even pissed off the White House. And so, and Homeland Security ended up freezing 3 of my bank accounts. And
wait,
that was
what was that for? Was it for the ICE thing?
No, that was for releasing White House phone numbers. So that was actually part of Anonymous. But it was after Michael Brown got killed, which was the first police killing in the Black Lives Matter movement. And people often forget it wasn't the fact that he got killed. It wasn't anything like that actually started it. It was because the police wouldn't give the name of the officer that killed him to the family. That's what started the entire thing. And historically, if you look back, and then they surrounded grandmothers with tanks. What started the riots there was they surrounded grandmothers with tanks and dogs who were holding a candlelight vigil. And so that's when all their grandkids and stuff were like, we're just going to fucking tear this place apart. And, you know, that's when the riots started over there. But regardless, there was a time before they released the guy's information, the cop who killed Michael Brown. There was a time before they released it where someone claiming to be anonymous said that this is the person who did it. And that person happened to be a city sanitation worker and not even a cop. And people were like giving him death threats and everything else. He had to like leave his house, and you know he was going nuts. It looked really bad for the anonymous organization. So the anonymous official channel said, we're not going to dox anybody for at least a week if someone claims to be us or even comes on our channel and doxes somebody or says somebody is somebody, don't believe it. Well, like 3 days into that week period, they came across 3 White House phone numbers that had never been published anywhere, that were directly inside the White House Situation Room. So these aren't numbers that are made for people like us to call. And so they ended up coming to me. A gentleman who goes by G of Antisec ended up coming to me and saying, "Hey, are you willing to release these?" And so I said, "Yeah, sure. Let's go. Let's release the numbers." My account was actually suspended at the time, but my Facebook, but I used my dogs. And I created an event, released the phone numbers, and then people started calling because they thought the police, their tactics were too heavy-handed. Like surrounding grandmothers holding a candlelight vigil with tanks and dogs. And it seemed a bit excessive, particularly given the fact that they were standing back during the riots, but during the peaceful protests is when they'd come in with all their their AR-15s and tanks and dogs and all sorts of shit. So I disagreed with that response in response to legitimate expression of speech. And so I released the phone numbers and had people call them. And for like 5 days, Homeland Security called me and tried to keep getting me to take the numbers down. And I kept saying, "Fuck you, I'm not going to do that." And then on the 6th day, I go to CVS. This was back when CVS still sold cigarettes. I go to CVS to buy cigarettes, and my card declines. I'm like, wait a second, I got money in this account, and I have like 4 other cards. They all decline. So I go back to my house. I call the bank. I buy the cigarettes with cash anyways. I go back to the house, call the bank, and they're like, Homeland Security put a freeze on your funds. So at that point, I'm like, okay, well, now I know what happened. But then I had to take it a step further, and I had to be like, well, screw you guys. So I ended up pulling money from another place, and I ended up getting a limo from Madison to Chicago. I ended up getting a suite at the Park Hyatt in Chicago, which only has 1 suite per floor. And it's a 5-star hotel. And I was chilling with Terrence Howard there. I ended up going VIP backstage to a Snoop Dogg concert. I went to a yacht party with Pretty Lights and Talib Kweli. I was massively doing it up. But then they ended up sending at the yacht party. They ended up sending an agent to try to infiltrate. So she ended up living with me, and then I ended up getting a townhouse.
Wait. Oh. They sent an agent, like an agent, like someone that pretended to be something?
But pretty much, yeah. Well, and here's how we know. There's 2 reasons how we know.
Okay, like she was a honeypot. Was she a honeypot? Or just...
Yeah.
Okay.
So the short story was she was supposed to fake domestic abuse or domestic violence incident, right?
Wow.
So what she did was she stole the keys to my Mercedes, and then she refused to give me my keys. So then she pushed herself against the door. So I'm trying to open the door, and I'm yelling, "Give me my keys!" And she's screaming on the phone, pretending like she's getting beat, right? Wow. But when she opens the door, she's drunk. But she didn't realize I had a friend on the other side of the door with me. So there was a witness. So now it's 2 sober people versus 1 drunk chick. So she had to tell the truth. The police, given that they really didn't like me, still arrested me for disorderly conduct because they said pushing on the door and yelling is disorderly conduct. And like disorderly conduct is one of those things that's so vague in most states that almost anything can be considered disorderly conduct. And that's when I touched base with the people who gave me the phone numbers. They're like, you need to get a 12-panel drug test. So I got a 12-panel drug test, and I tested positive for barbiturates, and I had never done barbiturates in my life. And so that's how I knew I was getting drugged. That's one thing to point to the government. But the second thing was we looked into her history, and her ex-husband is a CIA contractor. And so when you combine those 2 things, like everything, and she was a broke stripper from Illinois. So she had the perfect psychological ability to run this type of operation.
Right. Oh, damn, man.
She just happened to know someone in Milwaukee that she would talk to daily too. and would send her money. That was obviously clearly the handler. But yeah, so it all started to fit together. But that's kind of what happens when you post White House phone numbers that no one's supposed to call online.
Interesting. They ran ops on you, bro. That's.
But yeah, so in the end, I settled for disorderly conduct, and in the record of events, in the court records, it literally says, if you look at the details, which is free and easy to do in Wisconsin, remove from disorderly conduct abusive, violent, and remove certain words. And all I pled to was a boisterous, unreasonably loud, or otherwise disorderly conduct. Now I knew if we took it to a jury trial, there's very little chance that a jury wouldn't say that that's boisterous, unreasonably loud, or otherwise disorderly, just from a point of basic logic. But I do boisterous, unreasonably loud, or otherwise disorderly things every day. So that's where disorderly conduct like really ends up getting you. Is like it's really hard to beat that. So I ended up just pleading, but making sure that the record of events publicly stated what I was pleading to. The only three parts of the disorder, because there's like 12 different things that can qualify for disorderly conduct, but the only three parts that I actually admitted I did, and that the government was even alleging that I did. They weren't alleging any violence or anything like that. But yeah, so
wait, but how does that lead into this nuclear terrorism thing?
So yeah, so the government had been at me for a while. Then I ran a campaign for Congress where I was smoking bongs and getting drunk in my campaign videos.
I saw that video where it's like smoking and drinking to be able to say what you think honestly about things, right? You're taking
and my point was, and I believe this, that every congressional representative should be drunk and high and be questioned on things. Because people are more honest. It's a lot easier to lie to people when you're sober than when you're wasted. And so you're going to get a lot more honesty. You'll get a lot less professionalism. But do we really need professionalism? Between professionalism and honesty, don't you think honesty would be more important?
Right.
And so, and so I was trying, but off of $600, I got 16% of the Republican vote in a 5-way primary. And I was running on a platform that both parties hated because my platform was like, let's stick to the issues that both sides can agree on. Ending Citizens United, legalizing cannabis, ending private prisons, imposing tariffs on every company that moves jobs overseas, not just select ones, but every company that moves jobs overseas. Those types of things polled in 80 to 90% of the country. If you're getting 80 to 90% of the country, then clearly both sides agree on it. There's no way statistically you can splice it where it's one side's issue or another. But they don't want to talk about that stuff. They don't want to be doing that stuff because that's counterproductive to the whole show and game that they have running. But off of $600 to get that much of the vote in a 5-way split, 16% was astronomical and unprecedented, and it set a bad tone. At the same time, my brain cancer had gone into remission, and one thing that happens sometimes when people's cancer goes into remission is they actually go into a very depressive state, because for so long you were planning on dying at some point. You come to terms with that, everything else, and then all of a sudden everything changes, and now everything's different. The government knew that. They had profilers on me for a long time, so they came to the bar and they explained to me a poison called polonium-210. And scientifically,
so just to be clear, the people from the government, are they actual government officials, or are they like their ops, or like why were they there? Why did they come to tell you about this?
To be honest, I'm not sure. We had an expert that was willing to testify that I wouldn't have gotten a link if it wasn't from the government. But I don't know whether they just sent a civilian in, or whether that was an actual federal employee or anything else. That part was never answered. But what was answered was that I would have never been able to procure or attempt to procure it had it not been someone from the government, because the government was the one selling it. And so like, if the government's the one selling it and I'm not part of the government, how else am I going to get the link?
Right.
And so, but what they pitched it as was, and scientifically this is true, and you could actually buy it on Amazon at the time. You can still buy it from other online sources. So it's not actually technically illegal to own. But what they pitched it as was something that would look like the end stages of cancer. So people wouldn't know that, like, I took myself out. If the cancer came back, then I would just take myself out with that, and people wouldn't know that. But that's part of being in a major depressive state, and I wasn't getting help for it at the time. But also something that would be completely safe for anybody else. There's no way anyone else could get harmed unless they ingested or inhaled it. And that's scientifically true too. You can't make a bomb out of it. Kitty litter is radioactive, but they use words like radioactive, knowing that most people don't know what that actually means. And so, like, they'll assume that, like, oh, radioactive means like plutonium or uranium, so you're going to make a nuclear bomb. No, you can't do that off of this. And so, so what they ended up doing, the nuclear terrorism statute, which was this was the first prosecution, was they ended up selling this. They sold me on the idea, and then I went and I bought it. And the communications, like in the court records, you can clearly tell, and that's really the only reason why I'm on right now, is because you can clearly tell that it was intended for me. It wasn't intended for anybody else.
Just to be clear, so you're saying that they tell you about this, what is it called again? Polonium
210.
Polonium
Yeah.
210.
Yeah.
And they're pitching it to you.
Plutonium's a different beast.
But they pitch this random person or whoever you met pitches it to you as something for you to use to do, say the long goodbye. Is that accurate? And then you procure it, and then they go after you saying that, oh, you're trying to do some kind of like nuclear terrorism with it.
Yes, because the nuclear terrorism law only says that if you attempt, well, it was attempt. It wasn't actually, but attempts and conspiracies and federal charges are usually the same thing as actually doing something. So the charge was attempted nuclear terrorism, but the nuclear terrorism law says if you attempt to possess a radioactive material with the intent to cause death or bodily injury, then you're guilty. It doesn't say anything about the number of people you were trying to kill. It doesn't say you were trying to kill someone else. And so the government's entire argument was it doesn't matter if he was trying to kill himself. He's still guilty of this. And it was mandatory life that I was facing. And the judge actually, in the dismissal motion, the judge actually agreed with the government and said, because that even though Congress didn't mean for this to include suicide, he said suicide is a reasonably comparable evil to murder and terrorism. And so because of that, I'm not dismissing this case. Yeah. So, I mean, like, there was so much, there were so many bad rulings, and even like getting out on bond, right? The judge knew from the beginning, because he had seen the record. So he knew what it was from the beginning. He knew I wasn't trying to kill anybody else. He knew that from the beginning. And he even said, I was a good candidate for release because I had no violent history, nothing like that. I had a lot of arrests, but I had always been cooperative with the police and whatnot, outside of sometimes going completely limp, which is still not considered actively resisting. And I had always made it to all my court dates and everything else, in all my previous arrests. And so he said I made a good candidate for release, but because of my defiance to authority, he didn't think I would follow his conditions. And so he held me without bail the entire time, including at one point when it seemed like I had a stroke and the neurologist said he thought I had a stroke. I was still being held without bail. And the judge said no, I'm not letting him out. After the government, at one point, like 13 months, so 3 months in, the government offers me time served if I take a lower terrorism charge. They say, take this lower terrorism charge where it's flexible, it's not mandatory life, and we'll let you out. And so I did 13 months of the 16 months, knowing I could get out the next day if I just took their deal, because the deal was on the table the whole time. I actually took the deal 13 months in, just so that on the news it would say that they were offering me time served and they were letting me out, and that would be like in front of the judge. And so the news did cover it, and then they covered the fact that I backed out at the last minute too. So, because you can say you're going to take the deal, but it's not until the judge officially asks you and you say yes. But by that point, it's too late. The news is already there covering.
Right.
You have to get to a hearing for the judge to do that. So at that point I said, no, I'm not going to agree to it. I ended up even calling the news, and like at that point was the El Paso shooting, and I made a statement about how they should be going after actual terrorists, not like people like me, and yeah, so then my lawyers tried to say when I had what seemed to be a stroke, and even the neurologist said he thought it was a stroke. My lawyers tried to say like they offered him to go home, like why should you be holding him? And the judge still wouldn't let me out, even after they had just offered me to go home. And so, yeah, I mean, there was a whole lot of like the whole case is like completely messed up, and eventually it'll probably become like a documentary, like making it a terrorist or some shit like that. But yeah.
So where is it resolved as at this point? Like where does this stand now? They're not bothered. Have you sued them back for this? Like,
no, you actually can't sue them because they can say that they thought that they might find something, and that's enough for them to get away with a lawsuit. But what ended up happening in the end was I ended up settling for using an unlawful means to procure a radioactive substance, which means I used the dark web to try to procure the radioactive substance. It's the lowest grade of felony you can get in the federal system, and it's in the same chapter as moving fireworks across state lines. Not a terrorism charge at all. And so they ended up definitely losing. I got time served, but then the judge gave me 2 years of probation, federal probation as well. 8 months into federal probation, so I got kicked out of Halfway House. I called the mayor a cunt. I ended up harassing a federal agent, and what else? And I got arrested again for doxing the sheriff while I was on supervised release. And so, but it wasn't actually legal to dox the sheriff. It was the fact that I threatened him beforehand. But regardless, all those things combined, and the judge, and this is actually on my YouTube, the whole hearing's on my YouTube, where the judge calls me uncontrollable and unable to be helped, and he sentenced me to two months in federal prison. But then I was off of probation, and that was 8 months into the 2 years of probation. And then the BOP, this was the beginning of COVID, so the Bureau of Prisons was like, screw this, we don't want him coming in from the streets for 2 months. So they just gave me time served because the judge had technically put me on a detainer during part of the sheriff case that happened after that, the federal judge had. So they said that they were going to count that as federal time. So I ended up double getting that counted as federal and state time in the end. But they were just looking for any reason whatsoever to not have someone come in for 2 months to a prison in the beginning of COVID when nobody knew how this worked or anything. Like everyone was scared. Like it made no logical sense to send someone for 2 months to a federal prison. So I ended up getting out, and that's when I left Wisconsin. I was like, screw this, I'm out.
Yeah, I do want to talk about what you're working on in the whole crypto NFT thing. But the last thought I just want to ask you is like, I mean, based on your situation, when you look at other situations, like let's say the recent assassination attempts of Trump or stuff like that, like, do you feel like it's entirely plausible and believable that that domestic ops are being run and they're using impressionable people that aren't as savvy and as clear headed as you are to try and like make that, what I'm saying? You know what I mean? Like they could have like pinned something on you for trying to acquire this stuff and made it a whole thing. I mean, it wouldn't be that much of a hop and a skip to try and do some kind of, false flag pinning on someone who, they're running ops on. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, is that?
No, yeah, I think it happens a whole lot more than we realize and a whole lot more than we think. And there's actually a guy named Trevor Aronson. He's a journalist, and he had a podcast at least on Apple and Spotify. I don't know if it got renewed, but he's worked for a bunch of things, and he covers actually all sorts of cases in where they falsify terrorism. And where the government does that. He goes through court records and whatnot. He wants to go through my case. He's looking for the funding from somebody to do it. He's been looking for a couple years to properly go through, because he's went through the paperwork and he's like, I've never seen anything like this. And that's his specialty. But he was like, this is just so extreme, because normally what they do is they find somebody with the will but not the means, and then they give them the means and then arrest them for it. So that person would have never been a threat, even though they may have stances that would have, given them the will. He's like, in this case, there's no evidence of will or means. And in the end, the government actually, as part of the plea deal, had to admit on court record that they had no evidence after an extensive investigation that I risked any harm to anybody. And which was true. I mean, there was never any evidence presented, and they never found any. After interviewing like 1,500 people, they spent millions of dollars on that investigation. Like, they were trying to get me. They flew in. Actually, if you look at the prosecutor, her name's Rebecca Magnon. She lives in Washington, D.C. They flew her in from the terrorism unit. She's like one of the biggest terrorism prosecutors in the DOJ. They flew in the heaviest prosecutor they could to every hearing to try to prosecute me. Like, they tried their best to put me away for life. It just didn't work because they underestimated my tenacity, for one, and they underestimated that they wouldn't find anything. Like, they never did. And so other than like they found ties to Anonymous and whatnot, but that was too long for them to actually do anything about. But yeah, I think it happens a lot more than we think.
Yeah. Wow. That's wild, man.
I have a quick question. Do you feel like you're still constantly being targeted and monitored after all of this stuff?
I always operate under the assumption that I'm under surveillance. Yeah. But the thing is, I'm in the Ninth Circuit now. So I'm in California now. And in the Ninth Circuit, there's so much different precedent that all of my federal lawyers told me, like, if you were in the Ninth Circuit, this never would have happened. Like, they never would have been able to hold you. Because they would have needed, because there's just too much precedent that's too favorable to the defendant if there's not actually a solid case. Whereas in the Seventh Circuit, where there isn't any of that precedent. And so the Ninth Circuit precedent doesn't apply to the Seventh Circuit, and the Supreme Court hasn't made a ruling one way or another on either circuit's precedent. So here in California, I'm a lot safer and a lot more insulated from it. Because of the courts and the different things that they've ruled. But I do always operate under the assumption I'm under surveillance. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad that you're with us, and I'm glad that that you're now doing something that I think we're all fascinated with. We're OGs in at least in the Solana crypto space, and so I wanted to kind of first I wanted to talk to you about your this artistic ability that you developed, because you touched on that you had brain cancer. When was that brain cancer? And you were saying in the space, this is what really caught my attention when I was listening in there, was that you developed an artistic ability that you did not have before you underwent treatment for your brain cancer. Can you kind of tell us about that and how that came about?
Yeah, so 2014 to 2018 was when the run of brain cancer was. It had gone from my knee to my lung to my brain, and at that point in the U.S., like they don't even try to treat you. I did end up touching contact again with some people in the UAE that I had been in touch, that I had still kept in touch with a little bit, and through experimental treatment over there, I was eventually able to go into remission, but it did take 4 years. And the radiation is what killed my hair. Radiation, like, you don't get it back. Chemo, your hair can grow back. And radiation, sometimes if you get a low enough amount, it'll grow back again too. But if it's a high enough, if you get enough radiation, you'll never grow your hair back. So that's why I'm like bald now, even though my hair used to be like really black. Like, if someone with black hair shaves their head, you're still gonna see like the follicles and stuff. But like, this is like completely dead and gone. But either way, so yeah, that was the 4-year run, and through neuroplasticity. So that's what it's called, neuroplasticity, and that's a scientific term where when your brain suffers a trauma, which both brain cancer and brain radiation are. So it's hard to say which one of the two traumas it was, but when your brain suffers a trauma, it can actually end up forming new pathways that it never had before. And so it doesn't always happen, and it exhibits in different ways through different people, but it's not unheard of for people to get skills and talents that they never had before, or to be able to do things that they never were able to do before. As I understand it, somewhat rare, but not, like super rare. But for me, it was an artistic ability. I never had artistic ability before, but something with the trauma to my brain created new pathways that allowed me to be able to process and do art in a way that I wasn't able to prior.
Wow. That's fascinating. How did you, because your name in sort of the Web3 space is NFT Demon. I'm just curious, like, when did you discover crypto? Was that part of sort of this kind of history of activism? Did you meet people at that time who were telling you about Bitcoin, stuff like that?
Well, no, I actually, the interesting thing is, I was in the tech field through the telecommunications consulting. So I knew about Bitcoin in the beginning, but I, like pretty much everyone else in the tech field, like in the way beginning, thought it was just a joke. Everyone took it as a joke. And I actually bought a bunch of Bitcoin for like $10, and because it was such a joke, and so you could go and say, "Haha, I have Bitcoin." But I unfortunately never kept it because no one was taking it seriously back then. So that wallet's just lost forever. But there's thousands of people at least with wallets like that were lost forever because nobody was taking it seriously. And so you don't protect your seed phrases and stuff like you would back then. And back then it was all paper wallets. But yeah. I ended up moving, and it's only worth $10, so I was like, yeah, it wasn't worth keeping or keeping track of. But nonetheless, then later on, Silk Road came about, and this is another thing that 5-year statute of limitations I can admit to. I used to sell cannabis, and when I was actually prosecuted for selling cannabis at one point in Wisconsin as well. And cannabis, and sometimes I'd sell like acid and shrooms and Molly, just like party drugs, nothing, not like meth or heroin or anything like that, or even crack. But yeah, I mean, I used to get those drugs off the dark web, off Silk Road. And so that was my first introduction into Bitcoin. But really, I was only using it as a currency back then. I wasn't even using it as an investment. So I wish I would have kept all that like little extra, that was left over, because that would have been a lot now. But I didn't. But either way, that was my introduction into crypto. And then when I got out of jail, I ended up getting into meme coins, and that was right around when SafeMoon was starting to go. I think I was in SafeMoon like day 2 or 3. So I turned like $500, or no, I turned $50 into like over $5,000, and I sold it. I sold it actually like right at the top, right before that AMA. And it was only because they were late for the AMA, and I thought they were going to rug it. But then after that AMA, it just went down and never went back up again. So, but either way, I sold off like at the top. And then I started running meme coins, and I ran several very successful meme coins. And then the meme coin market kind of started to not be as lucrative, and I realized that the NFT market was still booming, and BSC NFTs in particular were very underrepresented. There were very few actual projects, and there were no actual real names. Like nobody was like branding themselves as an artist on BSC. And so I started Cartel Punks, which was the first collection, and is now the oldest collection on BSC that hasn't rugged. But I started that one, and that one ended up becoming the first collection also to sell out in under a month. It sold out in 2 weeks. It was the first 10.
This was about what time? Like to the 2021 or?
Yeah, probably was 2021. But yeah, I'd have to go look at the contract to figure out exactly when, but it would have been in 2021 sometime. But yeah, it was the first 10,000 piece collection to sell out in under 2 weeks on BSC. Then I created Badass Doggos. There was some controversy around that. And then then I ended up creating Catboy NFT, which was made to troll a scamming meme coin that kept promising NFTs and never delivering them. So I'm like, screw it, I'm just gonna make some NFTs. And then I made Gaming Shiba, which was another troll against another scamming meme coin called Gaming Shiba. And these were like scams that like other people didn't realize were scams, but I did, and I tried ringing the bell, but people weren't listening. So I'm like, screw it, I'm going to create an NFT collection just to show them, show them off and show that like they could be keeping their promises right now, but they're not. And by the time I was done with that, I became the largest artist on BSC in terms of NFTs minted and 10,000 piece collections minted, and several other different metrics. So that began my NFT journey.
From what I read, some of the collections that you created and minted, and I think that on BNC, right?
BNC, yeah.
Like they were like owned by celebrities like Eminem or something, and then that sort of got you in that whole world of celebrities and NFT stuff. Is that accurate?
Yeah. So Eminem owned 3 of my BSC NFTs. There was an article about that, and then all these different celebrities just started coming to me, because at that point, like, NFTs were the big thing, and amongst celebrities and everybody else, it's pop culture. Whatever the big thing in pop culture is, all the celebrities want to know about it. But it's a little bit complex for most celebrities to want to self-educate themselves on. So what do? They call an expert. And at that point, there were very few, other than like maybe Beeple and Zeneca, there were very few actual like big artists that were actually known by their name, and even Beeple and Zeneca aren't doxxed the same way. Well, now they are, but back then they weren't doxxed the same way I was. Like, I was going by my government name, so it was so super easy to find me. And so because of that, all the celebrities just ended up coming to me for advice and consulting and everything else. So that's when I started the consulting firm, and then that started to expand into Fortune 500 companies. And right now I'm actually working on a proposal for a foreign government on a way that we can do blockchain integrations and whatnot. But that may end up happening in the near future as well. So
that's cool. I mean, that's I believe it's called, what's the name of that?
NFT Demon Holdings LLC.
Right. Interesting. So and we're, we had a project called Zillionaire Goat Club, is still there. So there's been a way that NFTs have kind of been, I guess, I don't know, launched, created and launched, which has been this PFP sort of thing where you drop 10,000 of these unique NFTs, and then you get one, and that becomes your avatar and stuff like that. I'm kind of curious, one, what you think of the whole space, or at least that side of the space, having gone through all that. And then I kind of am curious now with what Drip is doing and what's happening on Drip, what your thoughts are. My personal feeling is like, I feel like that space got super scammy and like super, super weird, but I don't know. What are your thoughts?
I think, well, I don't necessarily disagree that it got really scammy and weird. And, the thing is, and it's completely illogical, because all of my collections still have telegrams open. There's still ways to interact, even though nobody is, because BSC NFTs were like 20% market share back when I took off. Now they're 0.4%. In my opinion, due to really horrible decisions by the chain, corporate decisions, because market share, you can't blame the bear market on losing market share. You can blame the bear market on losing volume, but not market share. And to go from 20% to 0.4%, like, that's pretty drastic. And so there's not really people like trading these BSC NFTs much at all, but it doesn't take me anything to keep the telegrams open either, and not rug it. Like, if you have an open line of communication with the community, then you haven't rugged the project.
Right.
And so, but that's why I don't get these people, because like, if your project is doing well, then you're going to be making money, and you're going to be getting paid through royalties for your efforts. If it's not, there's very little communication. Like in like even the Cartel Punks Telegram, there's very few times that someone pops in and says something. If they do, then I'll respond to it and whatnot. But like it's very low effort. I spend probably maybe on average like a minute or two a month maintaining all of my projects telegrams on BSC. Like that's worth it. That's worth it. One, just to keep the value of my name, right. Most importantly. But on a second aspect, what if BSC NFTs end up taking off? Then all of a sudden I've got all these historical collections, and then you start getting paid more for, but you put more effort in as well. Right. And so, but I don't understand why everyone decided to rug during that time. As far as the market goes now, though, as far as like a 10,000 piece PFPs, I think we're going to see a reemergence of that. I think we're going to see it go to the same levels again, because as long as meme coins are still around, there's still going to be a market for the like speculative / gambling type aspect. And that's what mainly it was back then, was, like speculative gambling and whatnot. And I think once Bitcoin soars, then altcoins are going to follow, then meme coins are going to follow, then NFTs are going to follow after that. And that's when like the speculative gambling type aspect of NFTs is going to come back. But I think you're also going to see an emergence of utility NFTs. And also like different use cases. Like I was going to launch a project. I'm still going to launch a project eventually, where the goal is to buy commercial or multifamily real estate here in San Diego, so that the next bull market or bear market, you have income coming in that's used to buy the floor. And then the people that don't sell or list their NFTs can end up getting raffled off those NFTs. So you're rewarding holding, and you're also buying up the floor in a way that market conditions don't matter. Like the crypto market doesn't affect the housing market. Like we can be in the worst bear market, but people are still paying the same amount, usually actually more to rent their apartments. And that's usually going up every month, regardless of how the crypto market is going. I heard one guy want to do the same type of thing with subways. And create Subway franchises off of NFT revenue, use that to fund it, and then, use that to boost the collection and whatnot. I think you'll see more things like that, as well as, just like complete full utility NFTs like car titles and, solutions for house deeds. You do have some companies making solutions for event tickets and stuff. Over time, that'll become a lot more prevalent, I think. But yeah, I think that the market is really strong. I also think that there is a good spot for a place like Drip for people to come and find creators for the content, not for the not necessarily for the dollar value. Because very little on Drip is selling for very much money, and just because of how many people get, duplicates of everything else, there probably won't come a time when, anybody's like, Drip piece gets unless it's like an ultimate and, like a big artist, then maybe it might pull in big money. But for the commons and the rares and legendaries, it's probably not going to be a time when those are hitting the hundreds of thousands of dollars ever,
unless your brand itself is worth a lot. And then even still, like the commons and rares and stuff, there are probably way too many.
Yeah, and I mean, people like the individuality when they're talking about spending the big money. Like they don't. I don't think there will be a market for people to spend big money on something that someone else has. But that's the big money. There could become a time when, some of these Drip collections, the floor price, it ends up being like $100 or something like that. I could see that for some of these creators and whatnot. But when you get to like the hundreds of thousands, like Bored Ape levels during the bull run, there's possibly some of the ultimates, the 1-of-1s will sell for those prices. But
like a Todd McFarlane Spawn 1-of-1 something, might be worth more than like, you know what I mean? And again, I do agree with you. I don't see the value of drip as being the money maker. I think it's like the community maker, the place where people can go and just get art, and if you like something, then you can kind of dive deeper into it because it's like the hub of all that.
Yeah, and that's the way I see it too. Is a place where artists who are doing other things and will be doing other things find more of a community, and buyers find artists that they like, or creators. Yeah, I mean, I guess it's not all like art. Well, it's all art in some way. Even if you're doing videos or whatnot, that's still art in some way. But yeah, it's more of a place for artists and creators to meet and mesh than I think a moneymaker. I don't think they even care whether it ever becomes a big moneymaker, for the artists. I don't think anyone's joining Drip to make a whole lot of money off of Drip,
Right.
Some people may be joining Drip to build up their name so that they can make money off of another collection somewhere else.
However, the other side of like to make money on Drip is now they're introducing that like a Patreon style subscription, right? And so if you use Drip as your Patreon landing point, then you can drive your revenue or whatever.
Yeah, so that's possible. Yeah, and I mean, even just in sheer volume, royalties at some point, if for certain things, like for celebrity collections and whatnot, if the celebrity really takes off, then people might be trading those often, and even if their value doesn't go to hundreds of thousands of dollars because there's so many of them, you could end up having tens of thousands, hundred thousands of individual trades going back and forth, of people doing it. And it's hard to say. But yeah, I think I think Drip's done something good to create a void in the market, or to fill a void in the market, that doesn't necessarily revolve around money, but more around community and more around acknowledgement and people just being able to find people.
Yeah.
Drip, the ultimate platform for connecting creators and fans. Whether you're into art, comics, music, or podcasts, Drip offers fans limited edition digital collectibles from top creators worldwide for a fraction of a cent. Find new creators like today's guest, NFT DEMON, who is constantly dropping new art. Follow him at d.rip/NFT DEMON. Just sign up at drip.haus and you'll have access to new drops happening 24/7. And if you're a creator, Drip is the platform that pays. Set up a Drip account to find out more. Follow The Goat Show at d.rip/The Goat Show for exclusive access to Goat Show collectibles. Now back to the show.
Well, I want to talk to you about what you're doing on Drip, and then also I think the recent collab with LiL Pump, which is kind of what brought me into that one space to discover who you were. What are you? How do you look at Drip in terms of what you're creating, and how did this sort of collab come together with LiL Pump, and what's sort of the idea behind what you guys are doing?
Yeah, so I think with Drip, most of what I'll probably do is sticking more to like the PFP theme that I normally do, that I'm normally known for, and show just like different styles of different PFPs and whatnot as drops. But and maybe have different collections that I do certain ones. There was one on Drip. I forget what it was called. I think it was like Alien Babies or something like that. That was like completely a PFP collection that did fairly decent. And I don't think there's a whole lot of PFPs actually on Drip. So even though some people are getting the same ones, I think that there still might be some people that have an interest in that sort of market. But so I might do some sets and some drops, where I do you know, 10 here and then 10, you know, a month or two later, whatnot from the same collection or whatever. But this first drop is a collaboration with LiL Pump. What it ended up starting, I don't know how LiL Pump found out about me, but it started with him in my Twitter, just, you know, DMing me, and it went to my spam folder because I didn't follow him at the time, and so he DMs me and he says, "Hey, what's up?" You know, just like a general "what's up," and I'm like, so I look at it and I'm like, oh, I guess it is real LiL Pump. So then I accept his request, follow him back, and you know, and we get to talking. At first, I thought, you know, like, this is just another celebrity cash grab. You know, I don't want to get behind this. Because he said he wanted to work with me in some sort of way. He wasn't quite sure how. That's where, you know, ideas later on ended up coming. And Drip may not be the only thing that we do together. I am also an admin in his token, and I do help try with like strategic planning and stuff for his token. But at first I was like, this is another celebrity cash grab. But then after like
his token is just $ LiL Pump, right?
Yeah. The website is lilpump.fun if you want to get all the socials and everything like that. But yeah, that was pretty clever in my opinion.
Yeah, I like that.
It's also going to be in the metadata for all of the NFTs that go through the Drip collection.
Oh, cool.
And so, but yeah, so after 2 months of him grinding, you know, and him actually continuing to stay with his token, I was like, okay, maybe this will be different. And I'm like, yeah. And I said, you know, like, just be honest with me. Like, are you willing to at least stick through the full bull market, which could be another like year and a half from now? And he's like, yeah, you know, like, I still got to do my music, you know, I still got to do, you know, that kind of stuff. But I'm not going to abandon the token. You know, I'm not going to I'm not going to completely abandon everything. I'll still have a level of involvement, still have a level of pushing it. And I said, okay, well, in that case, then I'll come on board. And so then I came on board the team. And then it was, so at first I was just helping more with like strategic type of stuff, just giving ideas, helping out with that kind of stuff. Because I had been in the blockchain for so long and been in meme coins for so long, as well as NFTs. And then I got approved for Drip. And I figured might as well make my Genesis collection a LiL Pump collaboration. And I'm already on the team, and it's a
right.
To me, I think that, and nobody's tried this for a meme coin yet, as far as I know, but for marketing, I think that it's a good way to potentially market, because then everybody who's claiming those NFTs is going to have the website at least in their wallet, and they'll be looking at LiL Pump in their wallet too.
Right.
And so, you know, that may end up driving up sales. If it doesn't, there's no way it can hurt the token, you know,
Right.
like,
Right.
or LiL Pump or me, you know.
Right.
It's not like if I were to like do a collection and sell, because once your name gets to a certain level in the industry, you can't sell your NFTs for too low. Otherwise, that lowers the value of your name within the industry. So like I can't do a collection and sell $5 NFTs. Because none of my clients are going to understand why I did that, and they're going to, and to a lot of people, it'll seem like I only did it because my name value went down, so that's all I was able to pull in and get, which is why I haven't released anything since like 2022. But on a platform like Drip, the whole idea is that creators of all different levels and all different levels of notoriety are giving the NFTs away for free or practically free. You know, it's 10 droplets. For some people that's free. For some people it's practically free. I mean, you get 1,000 droplets for $1. So, you know, that's yeah. So that's 100 NFTs for $1. And there's no gas, so you know that helps out people too. And so I just I figured, why not? There's no way this can hurt me. There's no way this can hurt LiL Pump. There's no way this can hurt the token, but it could potentially help.
Right.
And so the best idea we had, Lil Pump is like a very vocal Trump fan. You know, he's very, 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 very much into Trump and very vocal about it. He even had his car wrapped in Donald Trump and stuff. And
I was gonna ask you. I'm like, are you a Trump guy? Like, how do you feel about Trump?
You know, I don't really care too much for much of anybody who makes it to that level, because I don't trust the system making it to that level. In my opinion, and you know, and I've told Pump this, and you know, we can all have our own opinions. Like, you know, I really hate Kamala and how horrible of attorney general she was here in California, and all the lives that she ended up destroying through that. But what I believe is that you can't really say that anybody is like super great unless you acknowledge that there's not evil forces above the president that control the president. Because both candidates know that by now, and both candidates want 4 more years of being controlled by evil forces. Unless you believe that evil forces aren't above the president that control the president. And in that case, then you can believe that, you know, one candidate is like a god, you know, or whatever, or however you want to look at it. But I can't wrap my head around how somebody who's been in for 4 years can be the perfect person and not and still want to be controlled again by evil forces for 4 more years. So no, I'm not anti-Trump. I am anti-Kamala, but I'm not anti-Trump. But I'm also not like I'm not as enthusiastic as Lil Pump. We'll say that.
But, what do you feel about Anonymous supposedly supporting Kamala?
I mean, that kind of goes different ways. I mean, most of the people that I know, they really just hate, they hate both sides, to be honest. And I don't think, I don't know what there's the newer generation of Anonymous is pretty much disconnected from the founding generation and whatnot. So, you know, I don't know. I don't know what's going on with that, or where that opinion's coming from. But the old generation of founding members really are more like anti-government to begin with. You know, they're not like to a terroristic level, but like we just don't like the government.
Well, that's what I always thought, right? So this is why when I seen that, I was kind of shocked. I was like, really, Anonymous supporting any candidate? Like, that's kind of weird.
Yeah, all the people that were in the founding group that I know of, at least, aren't vocally really supporting anybody. They're you know, a lot of them are probably going to vote for somebody, but they're not vocally supporting anybody at this point. There were a couple that I know of that were supporting RFK at one point. But as far as I know of right now, when it comes to like the core founding group, we're all like pretty much anti both sides. But this new group, you know, the people who took over, you know, or who are basically running communications and stuff now. A lot of them are Gen Z, or they're pretty much all Gen Z, whereas the founding group was all millennials. And you know, I think maybe, I don't know, maybe they're a little bit more optimistic than we are that you can get change through the government versus through citizen action. But we were all about, you know, it's citizen action that's going to bring change, not government representatives, whether that be president or Congress or Senate or whatnot. And that's a whole lot of why we did what we did and took citizen action, even though a lot of that wasn't legal. But you know, that's why a lot of the hacking and stuff took place, was to show just how corrupt the government was. And I mean, back in the day, we hacked Democrats, we hacked Republicans, we hacked bipartisan places. We had companies that had supported Democrats and Republicans, but with the exception of a couple of people, there was one guy, Weave, who was in the founding group, and he ended up becoming like a massive Republican troll before Trump was even on the scene. And so, but outside of that, the actual core group is pretty much anti-government. Same as I am. Like both sides kind of suck in some ways, and we don't actually believe that either side has control. And we believe that Congress is actually a show. That both sides are colluding with each other, and that there's not really any authenticity anywhere in the federal government.
Yeah, I would say, at least me personally, but I think Fresh and Deezy probably feel the same way. Two wings of the same bird, essentially. It's kind of what we talk about a lot. But well, I mean, I will say that art on that Genesis drop is dope, with the Air Force One with Pump and Trump holding AKs. We'll put up an image of that, but I love that art. I wish I had known earlier. I would have definitely minted that.
Well, that one's the ultimate. There's still time though.
Oh, is that an ultimate?
Yeah, that's an ultimate. That'll be auctioned. The one with the plane is an ultimate. That'll be auctioned. The one that is the recreation of Trump's assassination scene with his fist in the air, but with Lil Pump as the guy, Secret Service, instead of like the guy that was actually there. That one is legendary. And then there's a couple rares, and then there's like 3 commons. But there's still time to get in any of them. The snapshot isn't until the 4th.
Okay, great.
So yeah, all you gotta do is follow my artist page, obviously, by the 4th, and there's going to be 30 days to claim or secure it. So there's going to be plenty of time. It's not. I wanted to run it up to the election. I don't know if 30 days might. I don't know how many days are in October, but 30 days might be like a day before the election, but it's going to be close to up until the election. But that's why I chose October 5th for it to actually drop. But the 4th is a snapshot. I think the 5th is when it actually drops, and then to have the 30-day window so that it went, through pretty much to the election. And so, they're all images of Pump and Trump. Some of them are things that actually happened. Some of them are more fictional, but yeah, it was a fun collection to create. It really was.
Yeah, man, it's dope. I remember, when I was seeing it in the space, I was like, this is cool. I definitely want to talk to this dude. So, well, listen, man, I don't know if you have something near you that you can drink, but on the show, what we do is we like to toast the goats, and you're definitely a goat in our eyes. So I don't know if you have something to drink with you, but usually just do a little toast. So a toast to you, good sir. Thank you for joining the show and being so open and honest with everything that you've gone through.
Not at the moment, but I'll do an invisible tequila shot.
There we go.
Cheers.
So we'll put all of your so for anybody out there who's watching, if you want to follow Jeremy, or aka NFT Demon, we'll put all his socials in the show notes and your drip links and all that kind of stuff. But I don't know if there's anything else you'd like to add before we close up shop here, but I think we pretty much talked about pretty much everything that I could ask. I don't know, Deezy or Fresh, if you have anything. If not, then we could probably just call it a day. But I just want to say thank you, man. Appreciate you being so open and honest with everything. Wish you much success on all of your all the art you're doing and drip and in your collaboration with Lil Pump. Are there any other things that you're working on in the future that you could maybe give us an exclusive reveal now, or is Lil Pump kind of the focus right now?
Lil Pump's main focus. There's a couple of prospective things that I have out there, but I don't know. I don't know if those move forward. What level of information those entities will want beforehand. released. And most of my clients, there's NDAs and whatnot. Pump never really cared about signing an NDA, but yeah, most of the time there's NDAs, so I can't really talk about a whole lot of stuff unless it's directly authorized. But there are a few things that are. There's one Fortune 500 company in particular that I think will eventually be moving on something that's going to be pretty game changing. And there's one foreign government that also I think will be moving on something that'll be pretty game changing. But I'm guessing that those will include NDAs later on, so I'm not about to talk about it now. But yeah, just keep an eye on things. And then I've got collections that I haven't released yet too. That once we get back to the whole the NFT market is booming again, then I'll probably end up releasing at least one or two of those. I got some pretty dope stuff that's been unreleased that's in like 5,000, 10,000 piece collections. So we'll see.
Oh, nice. Okay. All right. Well, you gotta let us know, man, because we want to get in early, bro, on the ground floor. All right. So, but with that, thank you so much, man. Again, appreciate you coming on the Goat Show. Fresh, what do the people gotta do?
Hey man, you gotta like, follow, hit the bell, comment, send it to your mom.
Tell Anonymous.
Yeah, tell Anonymous to start being anti-government again, and tell them to watch the video. Send it to your aunt, send it to your mom.
And all you ops out there trying to run nuclear scams, you gotta stop with that shit. All right, we see right through you.
Yeah, actually, fuck you.